If you are in a space of unpacking your beliefs and letting them unravel, this is going to be a conversation that you are going to absolutely love. Welcome back to the podcast. And today I am sitting down with Kayla Burch, an emotional mastery coach, and we dove into so many depths of beliefs and the attachments and the identities that we create from these beliefs, and how, as you know, beliefs create our reality. And so this is a really powerful conversation. We also dive into the realm of sacrifice and that identity that plays in the background, and also about victim mentality. So this is a really juicy episode. Kayla is so incredible. She helps successful entrepreneurs and coaches who feel stuck in emotional roadblocks to master their triggers, to step into deeper alignment, and to unlock their next level of clarity, of confidence, and sustainable wealth from the inside out. You are going to absolutely love Kayla. So let's dive in. When you go beyond the surface and into the depths of who you truly are, you will rise. Kayla, I'm so deeply honored, excited, all the things to have you on the podcast. I know we had a conversation for your podcast, but I'm so excited to have you. So thanks first and foremost for being here.
Thank you so much for having me. Yeah, that conversation was so good, and I'm so excited to continue it.
Yeah, likewise. Our area of focus and where I'd love to begin is really around your journey and your story, and just, the beliefs and those conditioned beliefs that came up for you, and what kind of just starting in the place for of what were those beliefs that you created.
So, what a big question. Yeah, let me just narrow it down. But no, they were actually, it's really interesting when we think about our beliefs and our conditioned belief, because they're usually rooted in something that is very similar. In that core, it is very deeply ingrained, and then it shows up in so many different spaces. And so for me, at a very young age, I had created this entire belief and identity around just being really stupid, just not being smart, like not being capable, not being able, not being as good as at school specifically as my classmates. And I have some really confirming things in my reality that would have mirrored back to me, you are kind of dumb.
Yeah.
And so I built that identity, and then I did all of these things to avoid being called out for being stupid. But that was such a huge thing, because a lot of people, they don't think they're smart. Like, it's not like sometimes it's a big thing for people and sometimes it's not. It's just like, oh, I messed up, or oh, I'm not good. But for me, I couldn't stop confirming how stupid I was. And then I would hear it and people would say it, and I just felt so horrible. Like I was never going to be successful because I wasn't smart or good enough. And so I created this entire identity around just being dumb.
Oh, I was watching this video last night of Gabor Mate, and he just talked about shame and how, we do everything that we possibly can to avoid feeling that shame. And that's what I just thought about for you, like in that moment of just, and then it kind of spirals into us, I guess, like playing small in our lives. So I'm curious, like, how did that impact you? And I guess, where did you start to see that it wasn't, I guess, for lack of better words, serving you, and where it was actually impacting you? Like, how did you come to that
Yeah.
realization?
So I realized very early on, but so I'll go back. Another thing that really highlighted this is that my brother was very academically like smart. I am an incredibly smart person outside of like just book smart. It's just not my
Yeah.
thing. Luckily, I never needed it in life, but it was fine. And so for me, the way that it limited me is the way that I even moved. Like when I got into high school. So then I started to make these decisions around not feeling shame and like being found out with like a very specific number on something like your ACT or your SATs, depending on where you're at, depending on what that looks like for you. I didn't even take them. I was like, I'm not going to college. I don't even need to take them. But that was so based out of fear because I didn't want it confirmed of just how dumb I was. I didn't want on paper for them to say, well, guess what?
Yeah.
We've never even had a score this low. And that's what I was so scared of. So then I noticed that even like as my freshman year came, one, my personality developed to be the really witty one, the really like magnetic, approachable, confident one, because then it didn't matter if I was dumb. It didn't have to be smart if I was all of these other things. And so that's where that really developed for me. Then so my freshman year, I started to realize I was making actual life decisions around this belief.
Yeah.
But it felt so true to me. Like I really felt so dumb. And then I started making my choices for after school. And I never did. I didn't go to college. I didn't do any type of testing. I was like, oh, I'm going to sell real estate. That's what I wanted to do. So I went and got my real estate license shortly after. Like I graduated high school in May and then was selling real estate by July, like that quick. And then I was like, but I made it sound like that's what I wanted. And it wasn't until I wasn't too far into my early 20s because I got really sick after. So I had my first daughter when I was 19. I'm married to my high school sweetheart and we had a baby real young. So after I had our first daughter, I got really sick. I was in a wheelchair. And I was sick for about 3 years and I was misdiagnosed. It was like it was a whole thing.
Yeah.
When I was in the wheelchair, that's actually when I realized the creation of our beliefs and our thoughts. Because I remember just thinking, I don't even want to be alive. Like, I don't even want to be here. And then I realized, oh, wait, I actually have that choice. Like, I could just not be here. Or I could choose to stay identified with this illness. Or I can choose something different. I can choose to stop identifying. I can choose to be well. I can choose to do things differently. And so that's what I did. I chose to do things differently. I stopped identifying with my illness. We found a different approach to healing for me, and it worked. But that in that moment, that was my first like come to Jesus moment
Yeah.
with choice in our thoughts. And I thought, well, I created these thoughts that I'm not that the thoughts that I was unwell, but the thoughts that I identified with being sick because I had Lyme disease, and they call people who have Lyme disease back then, they may still call them that, they have a nickname called Limeys. So I was like, well, I'm a Limey. So I identified with it. So I realized I have thoughts, I have choice, and I can choose something different. And then as I was doing that, that's when I started to realize this choice. Now, this cord of me being stupid did not go away. It did not go away for a very long time, but I was much more aware that it was a created thought and identity because I realized we create our identities and our attachment to those identities. Now, the dissolution of that attachment wasn't as easy as the awareness, but the awareness helped me over time dissolve it.
Yeah, I agree. The awareness of it, it's a lot easier for us to just, you know, I experienced this even just very recently of witnessing someone just have build her own awareness around a specific word and what emotions that brought up for her. And I think it's easier for us to be able to just have this awareness around, like, something's not right, or the beliefs that we create. But that journey of being able to dissolve those or let those go, like, that is the freaking hard part.
Yes. Because we think we've let it go. Like we think the awareness is the thing that dissolves it. And we're like, well, I know this now. Like I know the
Right.
lesson. And then boom, you hit another wall and that super comfortable belief and thought and identity comes to the surface and you realize that, oh, I'm still holding on to it. Oh, I was still gaining something from it. Oh, there's another layer I have to strip away. Oh, there's more here.
Yeah.
And especially when they're so deeply rooted and you've carried them for so long, it takes a while. And it's not that you're not moving through it. It's just that there's another layer and then there's a next thing. And you didn't even realize that it was tied up to this thing. And so it's just this constant evolution of like shedding it. And then I also find now I don't have that belief anymore. I have so many funny stories about having to let that go. So for me, really, where I really was able to let it go was in my business. So I was forcing myself to do, you know how business is. It'll do this for you. So like you either cave into all of your beliefs and you quit, or you realize you're going to have to move through them if you want to be successful the way you want to, right? That is how that's how it works.
Yeah.
And so for me, for a long time, I would cave in and make excuses, and I would have payoffs about, well, I wasn't good enough, or I'd make, that's why, and all these different things. But eventually I was just like, I don't identify with that anymore. And I don't wait for anyone else to validate me. So for me, it was completely removing any validation, whether it was good or bad from the external, that helped me learn my own intuition, my own knowing that I was good and capable. Because what would happen is I'm really good at what I do. Like, I'm a phenomenal coach and I'm really good at what I do. And at the beginning of this, people would tell me that you're so good. Like, oh my God,
Yeah.
like you're so good. And I'd be like, yeah, I am. But then inside, I'd be like, oh crap, they're going to find out that I'm not good.
Mm,
But they think I'm good now, but they're going to find out that I'm not.
right.
And so what I realized is that I can't even rely on somebody else's good job
Mm,
or bad job. It has to be from me. It has to be my knowing and my truth. And I have to say I do a good job. And so that's when things really started to shift for me.
yeah. It's so interesting. What that brings up for me is this, I relate to that in the sense that I've kind of always struggled with body image and just fully loving, accepting, embracing my body. And I will say too, as women, not to like separate and create this whole thing around women, but like I think we also, there's people that I've just seen in just understanding our cycles, that there's even that piece that we also have to bring this beautiful level of like compassion, because our bodies are not just that we feel different when we're going through different phases of our cycles, but our bodies are literally different in these different phases of our cycle. But that was always kind of a challenge for me, and this is something that I've said before in the past, is that it's never been about people, like no matter how many people externally said, oh my gosh, you're so beautiful, or like you have the perfect body and I wish I had your body, like no matter what, I was still struggling, and like just this feeling of just like, oh my god, don't look at me, because it just felt so uncomfortable. And I'm not to say that it is even perfect right now, but that's what it reminds me of, is just like that piece around, no matter what anyone says or no matter what that validation looks like from external, until it's coming from your core, it's not going to matter, it's not going to make a difference.
Yeah. It's not going to matter. And if it's not coming from you, only get, or like your card gets pulled. Like you could only get so many good jobs before someone tells you it's a bad
Yeah.
job. And if you're relying and you're waiting on someone to tell you that you're smart enough, good enough, capable enough, when that you're not doing good enough comes up, it
Shatters.
overrides everything, because it flicks that cord that you're not good enough. And that's what you really believe. And so until you change that relationship with yourself, that until you change that relationship with that belief you hold about yourself, the world will keep flicking it and you'll keep believing it and you'll keep ingraining it more and living it out and validating it and seeking it out in your own experience. So we have to change that relationship with ourselves and our thoughts and our beliefs to actually change our experience.
Yeah. This has just been something that has been coming up so much. I don't know if you've ever either listened or even read Neville Goddard. He's like someone that I've been reading some of his books right now. And this is such a big part of his work, and what he shares, it comes down to our beliefs and what we think. And that is what is ultimately being lived out, and what we're experiencing is all based on our beliefs. And I
Yes.
think it's like one thing to be able to say, okay, I understand that my beliefs are creating this reality. My beliefs is what is the crucial, most important piece. I had like, I guess, two parts to this. It's like, do you ever think that, or how do we know? How do we know when that belief, we've been able to shift that belief, and that belief is no longer like running in the background? And yeah, let's start there.
Yeah. So one thing that comes up, and I've been talking about this a lot, and it's embodiment. I wrote this morning, so it's right here beside me. So I want to make sure I say it right. Embodiment says, I already am that person. Like I'm already that person that I envision. I'm already that smart, capable, successful person. So embodiment, so Neville Goddard, it's all about visualization. It's all about believing that you are this version of yourself, right? And then this is where I think most people get wrong, and this is the other side of it. And it's detachment says, I don't need proof of it yet. And so I think that that is such a huge, crucial piece that we miss, because we can be like, I'm so wealthy or I'm so smart. And then you say something really dumb and then your bank account's negative. And it's like, wait, I can't create that reality because I'm still resisting and butting up against it. I don't need proof of it yet. I don't need proof in the external world that it's happening because it will happen. I trust, I believe that it's happening. And so the other side of this too is this is something that is it's really funny. So I had applied for an online coaching job. It's a whole story. I'm not going to tell the whole thing, but I applied for an online coaching job at one point, and I made it through this really intense process. And I was getting into an even more intense process. Like, you're coaching live on a call and getting feedback and just getting, yes, you're moving on. And it was like a game show. Like, it was wild. And so I have my laptop pulled up and I'm like about to get on this Zoom call, and I reach up to close this freaking Zoom. Like, I wasn't going to do it. I was so scared. I'm like, they're going to find out that I'm not as good as I say I am. And I'm like, I was about to close it. And then I was like, I'm going to tell my husband that the internet went out. Like, I'm just going to tell him it didn't. I'm not even going to tell him I quit. And so I go up to pull it, and then the person comes on. And for some reason, I was the first person she saw. And she was like, Kayla, welcome. And I was like, shit. Okay, I'm here. I'm locked in. All right, we're doing this. Okay. And so then I did the process, got it. Long story short, moved through that process. Absolutely amazing. Ended up working at the company for a long time and being the top coach, and ended up getting into a training position where I trained all the other coaches. So yes, I was good at my job. And if I would have closed that laptop and fell into that belief that I wasn't good enough, my life would be totally different. But what I share that story because recently I have a coaching certification where I certify other coaches. Again, I'm really good at what I do. I've been doing this for a while. And so I was like, okay, I don't believe that I'm not worthy or not good at what I do anymore. And to go through the accreditation process, I got it internationally accredited. So I got the email back and they're like, you're going to have to go. It was like 6 hours of like intense interviews and like live coaching. And guess what I thought immediately? Oh God, they're going to find out I'm not good. And then I just giggled and I was like, that's the dumbest. I don't even believe that anymore. But what I realized is, so you're going back to your question of how do you know when you've outgrown it? Well, how you know when you've outgrown it is when the emotion attached to the thought is no longer there. The cord has been severed because those thoughts are habitual. Like, we get into these habitual patterns of thinking these things in these moments. But what happens when we truly are in, oh, that's our embodiment, that's our experience, is that we attach the emotion to the thought, and that's what derails us.
Yeah.
And we don't realize that we can still have the habitual thought that comes up, and we can laugh at it and we can say, oh, that's funny, that's still there. I have no emotional attachment to that.
Mm.
And then we just move on.
That is such a like potent piece to this talk about the thought, how the thoughts are habitual, because I find myself, I think I'm even in this moment, and this was what happens when I chat with you is I get all these beautiful ahas, but I feel like very recently too, I've just been working through just like really navigating shame and where that comes up for me. And just being able to recognize and see that, things that once I deeply felt the shame around, and when it's there, and you feel yourself contracting and you just feel it. For me, it's like that warmth in your body, like the pit in your stomach, like you feel that shame. But just being able to witness and notice the thought that comes up and having these experiences and saying, I don't experience that same shame around that experience. And what's interesting is the mind is trying to come in and be like, you feel shame around this. And I think I'm just putting puzzle pieces together in this moment too, of just realizing that it's really important for us to, I guess, in a way, like really pay attention is one piece at it. And whatever the reaction is, like kind of laugh it off, or also just have a moment to check in and really sit with, do I actually think that this is true? And if it's not, acknowledge that, wait a second, I think there's power in being able to acknowledge in that moment that, no, actually, I don't believe this anymore. And also, just for me, I find myself, I'm very open minded in the sense that I can see so many different perspectives. And when I'm in conversation, I can be like, yeah, I see that. But now, even just being able to discern and say, when someone's almost trying to reflect back to me of like, well, maybe it's this. And I'm like, no, it's not that. And just being able to have this discernment, whereas at one point, yes, I definitely thought those beliefs, but now seeing that shift because that emotion is no longer tied. It's no longer there. And I think that's really important for us to be able to just make this discernment of, I don't believe this anymore, and to let those beliefs go. because sometimes I feel like we cling on to them. It's like going back to what you were saying of just how it becomes our identity. And it's not even something that we believe anymore.
Yeah. And the habitual part of this is something that we overlook, because what happens is it's like the thought comes up and immediately you're like, oh my gosh, I thought I outgrew this.
Right.
So the thought's there. And so you think that it's still like even relevant in your life. But the thing is that we don't control our thoughts. Like we can pretend we do, but we can't control what comes up in our thoughts, but we can control the direction of them.
Mm,
We can control what we attach to them. So you're not just sitting there and you control that you think about yellow ducks whenever you're meditating. That's not what's happening. That's just what comes up. And you can't control that, but you can either attach a belief or a emotion to that. Why do I always think about yellow ducks when I'm meditating?
mm,
Like, gosh, I'm so stupid. I can't focus. I'm always like this. I thought I was past this. And so that's what happens, instead of just being like, oh, interesting, yellow ducks. Or, oh,
yeah.
interesting. There's the belief that thought, or there's the thought that I'm not good enough again. I don't even believe that anymore. I haven't believed that in a long time. I don't operate out of that space anymore. And it's that inner dialogue. But thoughts can just be, because if we've ever created a thought, it's not going away. It's not going away. You won't think it every day anymore. It's not going to be your operating system, but there will be a trigger from the external world that triggers that habitual pattern to pop up again.
Mm,
And that's your choice point to say, I believe this or I don't believe this. I lean into it or I lean away from it.
mm. Yeah. Oh my gosh. I'm just like, the thing that comes up is just for those that are tuning in and listening to this and you've gone this far, like just really sitting with the beliefs that are coming up for you because maybe you don't even believe them anymore. And we've just kind of attached ourselves to it. And it truly is no longer something that has to be. And I just love the way you describe it in terms of where we lean in. You know, we can choose to lean into it and attach ourselves to it and make it mean something more than it has to be. Or I think this has also been like a very big just revelation for me very like lately is just around this, you know, what we attach meaning to is also very important. And a lot of that is always coming from our ego because our ego is just wanting to make everything about us and it all comes down to what you make things mean. And there is no good or bad. And I know that could be a whole separate
Mhm.
conversation. And that's been something very powerful for me, even recently, of just, I've always been very vocal of just like my relationship with my dad. And one of my good friends, she kind of nudged me to start listening and watching to A Course in Miracles. And I've never I've never listened to it, just started listening to it. And I just, you know, when it comes up, I listen to it. And it's been profound to really just recognize that I've attached meaning to the things that my dad has done or not done. And that's what's creating my own suffering. So, anyways, side tangent, I
Yeah.
feel.
Yes, but it is, and it's so true. It's so true. And the other thing that I wanted to mention too is that when you're talking about the ego, we get so misconstrued about how we attach to our ego. And what I mean by that is I've said it multiple times already on this podcast that I'm good at what I do. And that can be very triggering for people because they could be like, oh, Kayla's very like egotistical. Like she thinks a lot of herself. And so that can be very triggering, and people can then start to judge or think that, I'm full of myself. Well, the fact is there's a fact. I am good at what I do. Now, is everyone going to think that? No. Like, no, they're not. And that's okay because I don't actually attach my worth to how good I am at what I do. It is just something that I experience or that I do. Like, I'm not inflating my ego by being like, oh, I'm good at what I do. It is simply part of the story because it matters. It matters in the story and it matters that we share it. Now, if I'm like, I'm so good at what I do, like I'm better than absolutely everyone else out there, no one can do it like me. That's a whole load of horseshit
Yeah,
because that's not true either.
right.
But by me and us as like women and just humans celebrating our skill and what we're good at, we immediately think that's attached to ego instead of it just being us positioning ourselves in a way that we do love ourselves. We do appreciate ourselves. We do appreciate our skill. So even like this, I don't even know why that really stood out to me because it was really interesting because when I said it a couple of times, I was like, oh, I bet me saying that I'm good at this might trigger people because that's immediately what we think of. And the ego wants us to be elevated. But we also recognize that when we're not attached to our thoughts, I can say that. I can also say I'm really bad at a lot of things. And it's also just, it feels just as good or just as neutral as me saying that I'm really good at things, because neither of them really mean anything to me.
Yeah.
They're just what's true or in front of me in the moment.
Yeah.
And it's just part of a story. And so that's another big piece too, is just a level of that separation from those thoughts, because then that thought doesn't become an identity. I'm not identified as being good at what I do. I'm just happen to be talking about it, and it's a part of my story. Because if I didn't say that, then would you really trust me? Would you be like, well, Kayla, did Kayla really change her thoughts? Does she really think she's good at what she does? Or is she just pretending that way
Mhm.
because she wants to tell a cool story about how she thought she was stupid and now she does what she
Right.
does, right? So like there's levels of conversation that we have to do, and we have to embrace why that scares us to even say that we're good at something.
And I find the other side to it, I didn't even think about that, people would be triggered by that. And I think like, I'm not triggered by that because I'm sitting here in this moment of just like, hell yeah. And I think the celebration of being able to also own and acknowledge, I'm like, yeah, I can tell you where I'm really good, And I think it's where I'm going with this is a beautiful opportunity to bring awareness to why there is any sort of feeling or trigger. And that's what I think comes up so much for me in just this journey of being able to, question our beliefs, to if you really want to start changing the way, because ultimately if we're really looking at how our beliefs are creating this reality for us, and if the reality is not something that you are happy about, looking at our beliefs is a
Mm-hmm.
core piece to, I think, this conversation. And so it's just about getting very curious about why we are triggered in certain areas, why things bring up for us, and not from a lens of judging us ourselves or even shaming ourselves. That's not the point. It's just being curious is where that awareness comes from. And then awareness brings power. And you have to have this level of compassion for yourself as well, because yes, somewhere along the line, we've created that belief. And somewhere along the line, sometimes our environments have created those beliefs as well because of the experiences that we've had. And so I think it's just this level of just having compassion for ourselves in those moments. And also to be able to, it's courageous to also question our beliefs and to kind of look at them and confront them. That requires a level of courage from us to say, this is not the belief that I want. This is not, because often sometimes these beliefs are being passed down, and sometimes we don't even know that they're being passed down. And that's a whole other layer. There's like, I don't know, maybe we can group into like, we have the beliefs we create ourselves, and then we have like a shit ton of
Yeah.
beliefs that are being passed on. It's just like this piece around really getting to the truth, which I know you could speak to, but anything else you want to add to that?
Yeah. Yeah, but that's our conditioning, right? We're conditioned to believe a certain way, and so we're conditioned to stay small. We're conditioned to continue on the habitual patterns that we've seen our family members, engage in, and this is really prevalent when it comes to wealth and success as well. And so those are a lot of those different things. Like there's these such invisible ceilings, and sometimes are pretty visible, but there's ceilings that we put on ourselves based of our conditioning and our environment, because our beliefs can only go so big if we're not actively expanding them. And so conditioning it puts so much on us. Most of our beliefs, I don't even remember the actual percentage, but there's a certain percentage of our beliefs that we didn't even come up with on our own. They were given to us by somebody else. They're borrowed beliefs. It's like the majority of our beliefs. I don't know the statistics on it, but that's something that's really huge. And that's when we have to start questioning ourselves. And so I actually have a method that's like 5 steps that walks you through like the trigger to the emotion to why you have it to your choice point to then a different response. So it's called the trigger response method. So we hit one, you get triggered. Someone pisses you off, something triggers that belief within you. Then you have to ask yourself, why is that, like, what? Okay, so I recognize the trigger. I'm triggered that whatever's happening. And the second piece is, what's the emotion or the thought that's attached to that trigger? What do I actually believe about myself or another from this situation? And then we say, what do I gain from this? What's my payoff? Like, I'm getting something from this. I'm getting something from keeping this around, whether it was a belief I created myself or a conditioned belief. I still gain usually a level of safety. That's the part that people have a hard time with, is that payoff piece. Like, ugh, how do I stay out? What do I do here? Then we get to the choice point. And now once you realize all these different things, you have a choice point. And the thing is, like we talked about at the beginning, you have to make that choice point over and over and over and over, because it's going to be shown to you over and over and over and over. And then you just have a different response. Over time, your response gets different. Over time, you realize the integration of this is different. I ease into it. And so it's literally an incredibly tangible way to take those triggers and those thoughts and those beliefs and those conditioning, and then rewire your subconscious mind to believe something different, and to believe something different, and then to believe something different, and then to believe something different, until now it's your conscious thought, until now that subconscious process that you had that you were completely unaware of is dissolved, and it only comes up randomly when you get a random email or something very familiar happens and it pings it, and you're like, oh wait, no, I don't believe that anymore.
Oh, I love that so much. I also just love the way that you simplified that too. You have a way of being able to communicate these things that just makes it just makes sense. It's not that it's easy, but it's easy to understand, and when I think it's easier to understand, then it's easy to actually bring it into application and awareness and be able to implement it into our lives. So I'm so grateful. One of the beliefs, I kind of want to like transition a little bit, because one of the
Mm-hmm.
beliefs that I feel like a lot of us have, and I know I definitely have been, this has been coming up for me lately and it's been unraveling, but around sacrifice. And I think that's a really, here's where I get very triggered. And I think this came up literally yesterday. So this is so fresh, and I could feel my frustration around it, around just this like witnessing of, I guess, this belief that I've had around having children, sacrifice, and seeing this. And I'm also in the place of, I have so many like desires that I want to fulfill, this next book, and there's just so much I want to create. And it's interesting what's coming up around sacrifice. And you have just such a beautiful way. There was this post that you shared that I would just love for you to kind of dive into, like this idea around sacrifice.
Yeah, and I think it's truly a belief. Like, we create these ideas, we create suffering around everything that we ever wanted, right? So now we have all these things that we want in life, and we create this suffering around it. Well, I can't have this because I have that. I can't, have my kids. I have 4 kids. My oldest is about to be 16, and then I have an 11, 10, and 7-year old, and we have traditionally homeschooled them until January of this year. And I think that was a post that, when I talked about, like, you don't have to choose, like, you get to have the life you want. And now they're in a hybrid school, and we hired a full-time tutor for them. And so, but up until January, I ran my successful business. I was training coaches around the world. I was doing all these things. I wrote a book. I did all those things. But I couldn't have done those things a few years ago. And the reason why is because a few years ago, I was using all of that as an excuse, even though I didn't say that I used it as an
Right.
excuse. I sugarcoated the hell out of it,
Yeah.
right? Like, I sugarcoated that stuff so much. But what it was is, I was getting a payoff of, but if I use my family, or I use this as a reason why this isn't happening, I don't have to feel the failure. I don't have to potentially not be successful. I don't potentially have to be uncomfortable or have shame, because I have this calling to be a mom, and like all these different stories I told myself, when I realized that's all bullshit. That was all me hiding behind it. Now, that may not be your exact story, but that's what we do. Right? We do that, and we feel like, oh, I have to sacrifice this so I can have that. No, there's compromise, right? We can compromise. Like, okay, I'm probably not going to just be knee deep in writing my book while I'm trying to play with my
Yeah.
child. There's a compromise there, right? But it's not a sacrifice. And when we change our mindset and our belief around that, and we realize what we're gaining by feeling like, because sacrifice feels like a resistance point. It feels like, oh, we have to take something away so we can have something else. But that's just your reality. That's just the reality you created. And there's like this self-serving, like, I was so much like this, it's not even funny. Like, I'm like, God, I do everything. Like, I'm this, like, I sacrifice myself all the time for all of you, and nobody appreciates me. And really, I wasn't appreciating me.
Mm,
Really, I wasn't going full in on myself. Really, I wasn't doing the things that I wanted to do, and I was using them as an excuse.
yeah.
But sacrifice itself is an imagined state. And we create that, and we project it onto those around us. We don't have to sacrifice. We can have it all. We can have the wealth. We can have the successful business. We can have the thriving family. We can have the deep connections. We can have these things that we want, but that doesn't always come without a compromise. It doesn't mean that there's not a give and a take. It doesn't mean that we're not doing these things. And that's how I've experienced my life. And so I don't know if that answers directly to your question, but that is just like that's the way that it's arising and becoming alive for me
Yeah,
today.
no, I absolutely love it. And yeah, it's like it's not necessarily like 100% identical. I think the thing what comes up too is just this the piece around how sacrifice has been such a big player because of what I witnessed. And this is such a prominent example of just how your just what you experience growing up. And this is why it's like having being able to have so much compassion for yourself and for your experiences. And it's not to it's also this is the thing, not to shame or judge our parents either, because they are in the exact same spot as you, doing the best that they
Mhm.
can with the tools that they have, and also the beliefs and everything that has been created. It's we always have to come back to having compassion for ourselves, for our parents, in this entire journey. But what comes through as well, I guess, for me, as even the piece around compromise, is also just releasing our attachment to how we think it has to look, because I feel like
Yes.
that's also such a big piece around why we experience just so much I don't even know, like rigidity and just feeling like there has to be a sacrifice, because it's like it's all or nothing. And
Yeah.
it's not all or nothing. And
No.
it's just it's being open to it not looking like how you think it's going to look like either.
Exactly, because it rarely is. It
Yeah.
rarely is the way we think it's going to be, and then that's what creates a lot of resistance. And so when we think about this word compromise, it's not. It's just almost like a way to like cap or encapsulate what we're experiencing, where it's like there's days where I don't even touch my business and it's still
Yeah.
successful, and there's days I feel like I'm not incredibly present with my kids because I'm working deeply in my business, and that's still me having it all. Like, it doesn't have to be perfect. I don't have to have all these different things that happen on an every single day basis to make me feel like I'm successful in all areas. Like some days I'm not touching my stuff. I'm not doing it. And then some days it's like, okay, I've got some work to do, and, we hang out for an hour or two and we're good. But the level of it is that we create this identity around being somebody who sacrifices, and this is based off of conditioning. Like you said, we watch our family, our like, for me it was my mom, like, who just sacrificed over and over and over. And I just thought that that's how it had to be. Like, you had to sacrifice your goals and your dreams to be able to give to your family, and then all of a sudden you realize, shit, I don't have to do that.
Yeah.
I actually can contribute more to my family by going after my goals and my dreams. And I can build a big business and big wealth and big freedom and big success. And I can break the paradigms that I operate out of as a child, and I can create that for them. And it's when we let go of that identity of sacrifice, because, and if sacrifice feels like a positive word for you, right? You don't have to let go of it. Like,
Yeah.
if you're listening to this and sacrifice feels positive for you, fine. But most of the time, I don't think it does. Most of the time, I think we use it as that crutch and that like lever that we can pull at any time. But I do this, but I do that. I do all these things. So then I don't have to show up in every area, or I have an excuse of why I'm not showing up. And then it becomes us.
Yeah, yeah, this piece around sacrifice. And I think that's why I've really had to just work through, because that's what it is, this identity. I think that's what really clicked for me from what you just said, was just this piece around identity that we create around sacrifice. And I think that's why I've had so much resistance to the piece around becoming a mother. And the thing is like when I like drop into my body, I'm like, absolutely yes. Like it's an excitement, and it's something that even when I'm around my niece and my godson, it's like this is what I want to experience, and I want to have this. And I also want to be able to fulfill all the beautiful desires that I have in my business. But it's this identity around what sacrifice has meant and what that's looked like. And yeah, just being able to reframe that, I think, has just been, for me right now in this conversation, has been so helpful. So I truly hope those that are listening to this too are being able to just get something out of it, and also just receive, and simply just being able to start to notice, because I feel like that I know this sounds so cliche and I say it all the time, but I truly believe that awareness is power. And that's really the starting point. Because if you don't know something, that you feel a certain type of way, or you have this certain thought, or you have this certain belief, then how are you ever going to change it if you don't have the
Yeah.
awareness around it?
Yes. And then just to kind of extend on that, what came up when you were describing that was also asking yourself when you get to that sticking point and even like a choice point of like this sacrifice, it's what do I think I'm going to lose by gaining something else that I want? What do I think I'm going to lose? Well, likely, I'm just guessing for a lot of people, it has to do with freedom. Like, I'm going to lose my freedom. But then we realize, but I create my own freedom. So how could I ever lose it? I'm just a free, sovereign being as I am, and I create my freedom or my captivation. So how could I lose that unless I'm willing to be captive to something else, unless I'm willing to imprison myself somewhere else? So then we get down to this like real truth of like, I can't ever not be free. And if that's what I'm scared of losing, then let's go for it, because I realize I can be free however, and it's going to look the way that it looks for me. And so there's like this really free and expansive state, but it comes always back to questioning why we do that. And then it's just the opposite. What do I think I'm losing if I gain this? Sometimes we don't like always look at it like that.
Yeah, I think sometimes there, at least for me, and this is why I feel like our conversation and just being in your space is the questions that you ask and that you pose is so powerful, because I think sometimes we get stuck in like at a certain point, and and we know to get curious, and we know how to become aware of something, and then we're like, all right, now what? Now what do I do with this
Mhm.
awareness? I don't want this belief anymore. So I really just want to yeah, I really want to acknowledge like the questions that you've brought and landed here in this moment. I feel like are just powerful things that even for myself that I know that I'm going to take away to be able to just get to this other like layer and depth of the beliefs that I'm currently questioning, and being able to like unravel and being able to let go of and release. So I'm grateful for so much for you for sharing your beautiful questions that you pose.
So glad it
You
resonates.
are good at what you do. So this is just the proof.
Thank
Just
you.
saying.
It is. It's just facts, man. Just facts.
The one really powerful last like piece that I would really love, because again I think you completely shifted this for me when we had the conversation, and so I would love for you to just share it here, because I think it's a really powerful piece around this victim mentality, and I've never heard anyone describe it the way you do. I feel like we are very aware of one kind of side to this victim mentality, but you have this other side that's so beautiful. But I love for you to kind of share like your perspective and angle on it.
Yeah. Yeah. So since I self-identified with the other one that we don't normally talk
Me too.
about, that's, kind of where it came from, was just life experience. But so when I talked about mental or victim mentality, it comes in the way that we oftentimes, the one thing that we always think about is the victim that's always pushed down, right? The one that's always, they are always the victim, like what we think about, like you just feel bad for them, right? You just feel bad. And then the other one, like things are happening to them. Now, the other side of victimhood, which we don't really talk about or even think about, is that there's actually an overcomer that's also a victim, because you can't overcome something unless you feel victim to it. And so, oftentimes, what we do in our life is we create all these different situations that we're victim to. So then we can overcome them. And so we identify with the overcomer. But what we don't really think about is that we had to be victim to something first. And that's okay. Like, we overcome things in our life and we can move through them. But what I'm talking about are, and if this resonates with you, it's the people that have to create things in their life to overcome. Like, they have to be the hero in their own story all the time. So you're constantly looking at different spaces and areas to overcome. And so now that becomes your entire identity. I'm an overcomer. I've been through so much in my life. I've gotten through all these things. I overcome. Well, if you identify with that, then guess what? You're going to keep having to overcome things, right? You're just going to have to keep doing it, because that's who you are. That's your identity. Now, that doesn't mean that you don't have challenges and you move through them when you don't identify with it, but they don't become the thing that you focus on
Yeah.
and you look at. And so that's just kind of like high level overview of what that looks like.
Yeah, it's when I think it's because I resonate so deeply with that. And it just brought this level of awareness of just, where we are. I guess just, I think it comes back to like identifying with these moments in our lives where it's like, and I think it's, it comes from this piece, or at least for myself, around just like constantly reiterating the same narrative. And just that's what happens is when you're constantly reiterating the same narrative, and maybe you've felt like this a little bit too when you were talking about you getting sick, you're like replaying this narrative and identifying with this piece. And it's kind of similar in that sense. But yeah, I feel like there's just this energy that we don't talk about when it comes to how, like, just being this person that like, this is who I am, I'm going to overcome things. And we're not even realizing that we're just, every situation we're making difficult, we're making the struggle
Yes.
part of our lives because we want to be this overcomer. Now, I feel like there's this, is there a way to kind of identify where, for lack of better words, I'm going to say healthy, unhealthy? Like, I can't think of any other way, but hopefully you understand what I'm trying to say when I say that, of just it not being this thing where it comes from this, like, we're creating this struggle for ourselves. And yes, we are overcoming that. We're not diminishing the things we overcome. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. So I think that one thing is kind of goes back to like that almost like ego attachment.
Yeah.
So how do I feel when I do this? So like if you feel and this is gonna let me kind of walk through this. Like if you feel like a lot of great joy, like you're like, yes, there I am overcoming. And like then it's just like it's almost like you're addicted to it. Like we get addicted to overcoming. And so then it's like we can't stop seeing things to overcome. Like that is when we get into this unhealthy relationship with it. Versus this deep knowing and trust that when we have a challenge, guess what? We're going to overcome it. We're going to move through it. It's just part of life. And we trust ourselves and our ability to move through it without it being like the ding, 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 you're so amazing. Like, and another great example of that would be when I was really sick, the identity of being an overcomer, like, oh, I don't know how you do it. Gosh, that must be so hard. I was having multiple seizures a day. I had a newborn baby, all these different things. And people are like, I don't know how you do it. And I'd be like, I just do, you know.
Hmm.
Just do. That made me feel a certain way. That made me feel good about myself. So that was external validation. Or when I had like my boys are 12 months apart and then I had a 5-year-old. And so I'd have one baby on the front and then one baby on the back. And I'd be like walking around. My husband had just had an accident. He was in a wheelchair. I was like pushing him in his wheelchair because his legs were straight out. He couldn't walk for 3 months. They're like, I don't know how you do it. And I'd be like, I don't either. I just do.
Yeah.
Right. That's when you know that you have an unhealthy relationship with it. And when like maybe you want to turn so people can see that you have a baby on the front and the back and you're pushing a guy in a wheelchair, that's when you know the relationship is unhealthy because you're seeking out a feeling outside of you. Anytime you're seeking a feeling outside of you and you're waiting for somebody to mirror or validate it within you, you know you need to check where that's coming from. Right? So you can overcome without making it a spectacle.
Yes.
Like you can overcome without identifying with the praise and everything else that comes alongside of it. Does that break it down? Does that explain it?
Yep. Amen.
Perfect. Okay. Awesome. Good.
Amen. Yes. Oh my gosh. I love just how we kind of circled right back to the whole piece around, because I think that the validation is, it might not necessarily be all of it, but it is a big part, because it's really this kind of experience of, I'm gonna make sure that I overcome this, and then I'll be able to share this and I'll put it out there, and this is what it's gonna, I get to tell this story. Like, even just that is, you said it perfectly. It comes down to ego. And when it's coming from this place of, well, let me do so, like, let me stroke my ego a little bit. Yeah,
Yep.
that's like a
Yep.
really powerful way of really seeing that it's not a good relationship of overcoming. And just simply I think coming back to that trust piece was so beautiful.
Yes. And then one more thing to like kind of add to that, because this can go for anything, whether you're identifying with victimhood or overcoming or literally identifying with anything in your life, is would I feel whole and complete without this in my life? And if that answer is no, if we remove that praise, if we remove that situation, if we remove that belief, if we remove something and you don't feel whole and complete, then it's filling something that you need to address. And so that's a great question to ask anytime something's coming up. It's, would I feel whole and complete without this? No, I wouldn't. That means I'm reaching to the external and not from my internal. And that's a really good starting point too.
Oh my gosh. Kayla, how did an hour go by? Like, you are
I don't
just so
know.
incredible. I'm serious. I'm in awe of just being in conversation with you because there's just so much potency that comes from your mouth and from your deep knowing. I know that's where it's coming from. It's this deep divine
Thank
connection
you.
that you have, and I'm just so grateful for you for being here. And I'd love to just kind of leave it, have you just share if there's any kind of final pieces of like wisdom from everything that we've just covered. I know we talked so many things, but any final pieces of wisdom?
Yeah, I think I would just really wrap it up with just question everything. Like question your thoughts, question your beliefs, question the emotions, and see what they're attached to. See what cords they have in your life, and then work through that. Like allow yourself the space without judgment or criticism, and just grace to say, let me question this and how can I move through it? And I think that would be the best advice you could give, is just question everything.
Thank you for listening. Make sure to leave a review and continue the conversation with me over on social media. And we'll see you in the next episode.